All right, hello and welcome to the first basically weather briefing that we've ever done on this channel. Haven't really done these too much, but figure we'll give one a shot today and maybe do some in the future if this one is well liked and whatnot. So basically, what we're going to do, we're going to look at the severe weather threat going forward, both today, tomorrow, and we're also going to take a little bit of a look at Monday. Monday could be a much different day than we're looking at for the next 2 days here. So basically, what we have lined up, basically across the region, we'll take a look at the larger continental U.S. view here, just to get a look at the large scale pattern here. And this is on the NamNest NAM3K. Going to use a more high res model for this forecast briefing. And essentially, what we've got going on here is a big, large ridge over most of the central U.S. And this is what's commonly referred to as storm chasers as a death ridge. But the thing about a death ridge is it's only a death ridge if you live in most of the southern part of the plains. This is where the northern plains, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, this is where our time really is to shine. Of course, we're stationed up here in about Grand Forks. This is why we're concerned with what's coming up. And as you see in this large ridging, we do have sort of some troughing back out here to the west that'll eventually make its way into our area as we move forward into early next week. But as we go throughout today and through the weekend, we're going to be buried under this gigantic ridge here. So let's zoom back in a little bit closer. And actually, first, let's go ahead and play this out and just kind of get a progression of this over the next several days. We see that troughing really takes its time. We get a bunch of these gentle perturbations moving through North Dakota, and those are going to be the trigger for storms over the next several days. But by the time we're looking at around Sunday night, we start to see a very quick jet and also some larger waves embedded in there, and especially a pretty large one coming onto the west coast that might rile things up a little bit later in the forecast period. So let's zoom in a little bit closer into the northern Great Plains here, get a look for what the jet stream is doing up here. We're going to try and keep this relatively quick. So basically what the forecast is for tonight, essentially we're going to have some high-based, not necessarily elevated, but very high-based convection develop out in western North Dakota, right around the Minot areas where most models are kind of focusing on this beginning to develop. We see here as we move forward towards around 20Z, we get this wave, this embedded little shortwave to move in to western North Dakota. And at least on the NAM3K, I noticed this on the HER as well, it's a pretty aggressive little shortwave here. Not a lot of curvature in here, but nonetheless, this should be enough. This little wind max, this little speed max detached from the main flow should be enough to initiate some convection as we go into the evening hours. And as we move forward, we see that thing moves relatively quickly off to the east towards the Red River Valley, places like Fargo, Grand Forks, and then into northern Minnesota. And by the time we get to around the 4-5Z time frame, our diurnal heating should be basically non-existent, of course, by that point because the sun is going down and these storms will lose energy. So basically for today, we're looking at those storms of fire around that Minot area and then very quickly move through northern North Dakota into the Devil's Lake Basin and then into the Red River Valley of the north here. So what we're going to go ahead and do is take a look at the dew points in our surface wind barbs, get an idea of where our moisture is and where the wind is taking that moisture. The real answer to this is there's not a lot of moisture here. So we look around 22Z. This should be somewhere around when initiation is occurring. We're seeing that dew points are hovering in the 50s, the low 50s, across most of northern North Dakota. And that is not conducive to tornadoes whatsoever, especially if we go over here to our surface temps, our surface temperatures are going to be near 100 degrees. It's going to be very, very hot out there today. And actually, it's a little bit later. Look here, 22Z. Yeah, plenty of hundreds basically blanketing North Dakota today. So very big temperature dew point split, around a 50-degree split in our temperature and our dew point. So what that's going to create is very, very high-based storms. And these storms really won't be capable of tornadoes. And we can get a better gauge on that if we take a sounding here just the other side of Devil's Lake Basin here. we can get a feeling for that. So our LCLs are where our cloud base are going to be, and those are all the way up at 3 kilometers, and we see just how big that temperature and dew point split is. It's around 50 degrees, very big temperature dew point split. Now, where this is bad for tornadoes, this is good for downdrafts, and this is what we're mainly concerned about tonight. Essentially, we see all of our instability, all of our cape is essentially confined above 3 kilometers. Not a lot of cape down here, but we see that our idealized parcel is separated from our environmental temperature by a decent amount, from about 3 to 12 kilometers. So we have a lot of elevated instability here. And once these cells begin to convect, those downdrafts are going to be able to basically transport down to the surface very, very efficiently. One of the reasons being is our surface to 3 lapse rate is dry adiabatic. 10 degrees Celsius per kilometer. That's exactly dry adiabatic. So we're going to have very efficient downdrafts. And as well, if we kind of look at the winds at that level that can be transported downwards, we see we have 30 knots. And even above that, it extends up to like 40 knots, even up to 50 at 300. So as these winds begin to mix down, we are going to have the potential for some very, very strong winds, as well as some lightning. It's not looking like tornadoes or hail are really going to be a threat. But mainly winds are going to be the big thing as we go throughout today. If we take a look back at this dew point map, kind of see that we do, as we go through this, we do have some surface troughing here, a little bit convergence. Basically, we have northwesterly winds here, a little bit of southwesterly winds down here. So we do have this kind of area of surface troughing and convergence across basically central North Dakota, and that's where this line of storms and convection, I do feel, is going to end up kind of focusing and traveling along. And we see on our dew point here, dew point map here, as those storms initiate and begin to rain, we see at 0Z, this is a big old storm right here, and those continue to move off towards the area. You kind of get a gauge for them there. Usually, it's a good idea to try and stray away from some composite reflectivity or simulated reflectivity, but we'll go ahead and look at it real quick. And we see there that that's kind of what these storms are looking like. No supercellular shape to them, just kind of these nebulous, gusty storms that will likely feature a decent amount of lightning. But while they look rather benign from a composite reflectivity standpoint, if to the untrained eye, these just look like general thunderstorms. If we actually go to the model-generated surface winds, these will indeed be packing quite a punch. If we go right about here, we see a big cold pool with heavy winds, and that's getting up towards, at least in the max of it, around 48 knots. So it's borderlining on severe threshold, and I know the HER has been fairly aggressive with these winds. Of course, the HER, kind of an interesting model to use sometimes, maybe not the most trustworthy. So that's kind of what we got going on for today. Basically, anywhere north of basically I-94, you guys can expect probably some thunderstorms, and any thunderstorms that do pass over your area will likely feature winds upwards of 40 miles an hour. I'd say it's probably the low end of the winds that you'll see with these storms today. With the high end, I know the SPC has put out, maxing out around 70 miles an hour. So pretty aggressive winds possible with these. If we take a look at tomorrow, another relatively similar setup, except now our overall flow is a little bit calmer. We see here around 23Z, we get this little detached speed max again. So our main jet is back up here in Canada, but our little detached speed max, and these are the things that like to rile up this ridge time convection. We see that basically positioned here, little more east of Minot, at least on this NAM nest run. So we kind of go through this. We see it that it has a little bit different of a direction on it. As we look through today, it's more of a straight, west to east propagation. This one was looking towards tomorrow is a little bit more southwest towards northeast propagation. So storms are going to be moving a little bit different, maybe a little bit different dynamics on them, but in reality, the environment is going to be mostly the same. And again, it's looking like the Devil's Lake Basin, or maybe a little bit west of there, could be the problem area. So if we look at tomorrow, Things are a little bit different and a little bit more favorable for a tornadic situation, although I don't anticipate tornadoes tomorrow either. As we look at this, we see we have a lot higher dew points, at least in the sounding. It's not a contaminated sounding, so this is just a environment sounding here. 65 dew points, that's usually enough to get it done for tornadoes, but it makes it a lot harder when your surface temperature is 91 degrees. And we see that our LCLs, because of that 65-degree dew point, are a little bit lower of a high temperature, are coming down just a bit now. I think this is a little bit low. I think our LCLs will very likely be more towards a 2 to 3 kilometer range. But the other thing we see that we really like for tornadoes tomorrow is going to be the low level shear. Now, there isn't a ton of it, but there sure is a lot more tomorrow than there is today. So tomorrow, whereas a tornado can be ruled out today, tornado cannot be ruled out tomorrow. We have nice curvature in the lowest 3 kilometers here, so maybe some mesocyclones developing with these. Probably not tornadoes, but maybe some nice supercells developing tomorrow around the Devil's Lake region, or maybe just a touch to the west of there. If we look at our basically our instability, so today I didn't really cover instability for today all that well. We can go over here and look at our crossover and check for today. We see that our cave values really aren't that high. They're only around 1200 for surface-based cave, so nothing big with instability there today. But as you head forward towards tomorrow, the instability is a lot greater tomorrow, at least on the NAM Nest here, seeing values around the 2 to 3,000 range. So tomorrow looking like a much more classic severe weather setup, although I still don't think tornadoes are going to be the name of the game. I do think some high-based supercells, probably some structurally sound supercells, may be more the name of the game. And of course, looking at these a little bit west of Devil's Lake, and as we head towards nightfall, maybe them traveling up towards the northeast corner of North Dakota. So both of these days, nothing too big. I think the main threat both of these days is going to be wind. Today, especially wind, almost exclusively wind. Tomorrow, maybe some hail, maybe a land spout, or maybe an isolated tornado can't be ruled out. But looking like wind most of these 2 days. But if we jog over to the NAM, which is a thin range of Monday night. Monday night is where we might be looking at a more robust severe event here. So if we go to our dew point and our wind barbs here, just to get an idea of what's going on with our moisture pool. Of course, can't take these deterministic models, as exactly what's going to happen, but at least this is one scenario that the NAM right here is playing out, and this could be a pretty big one. We see a very big, nice surface low here, and a very big, very moist warm sector. You see that warm front sitting basically over the Grand Forks region, extending over to Duluth, and all south of there we see 60s, even up to 70 dew points being piled up across the entire region. No real well-defined dry line over here. If we go to temperature, maybe some sort of dry line feature there, but not a very compact one. And that leads me to believe, at least right now, that maybe the best action for this day may be setting up along this warm front up here. I know we were chasing down south, and every day we didn't chase the warm front, and I think I'm going to learn my lesson, and probably on Monday, if I'm chase the warm front up here. And if we just go ahead and take a sounding up here, this is an environment conducive to tornadoes. We see a lot of shear in that lowest kilometer and the lowest 3 kilometers, and all of it basically consisting of streamwise vorticity there. Looking at our helicity values, those are proper values for tornadic activity. Our LCL's probably going to be a little bit high still, just because our surface temperature is so high up there, 90 degrees still. But what you notice is there's no capping going on, and we have a 69-degree dew point. So we have very moist air mass, lower LCLs, and no capping along the warm front. So this is where we could have that higher risk of tornadoes. Now, it's a little bit irresponsible even at this point to nail down exactly where this highest threat is going to be, but it's looking like somewhere around this tri-state region here in the North Dakota, Minnesota, South Dakota region. Maybe showing a focal point on like a Fargo. Maybe it shifts a little bit back towards a Bismarck, or maybe more towards a Sisseton. But it's looking like probably a fairly robust severe event could take place on Monday. If we look at our upper level winds, which is always good to look at for these, it's hard to get really big severe events without any upper level wind support. We do see that upper level wind support is backed off a little bit to the north. But again, that would lead me to believe that, hey, the warm front might be the play here, maybe back towards whatever sort of triple point may exist back here towards Bismarck. We see that wind very, very calm down here in the south, but as we head towards that warm front and towards the nose of that surface low, it picks up a bit towards around 40 knots. Some places even seeing 50 knots. So pretty interesting severe weather setup coming up down the pike here. If we look at we can always look at our cape values and our crossover. This is one of my favorite maps, the surface-based cape and the crossover. Essentially, this sort of map right here is what you like to see if you want tornadoes. I mean, you got good 500 millibar flow, and it's rapidly. I mean, I guess the low levels aren't necessarily rapidly turning at most of these, but you get a decent amount of turning with height with that, and that's what you want to see. You want to see those turning winds with height, and then instability. I mean, these instability values are getting a little bit silly here, approaching 5,000 here. I would argue they could probably take about 500 to 1,000 off that and be closer to the real value for the day. Of course, this is surface based, but quite the environment looking to set up on Monday once we get this large scale ridging out of the way. And again, here's just another sounding. You see that nice sickle shaped photograph up to 3 kilometers. That's what you want to see if you want tornadic activity. So pretty interesting stuff coming down the pike. We'll likely be chasing at least 2 out of the 3 days that we talked about. So stay tuned for any videos of those that may be coming up. If you like this forecast briefing, let us know. Let us know what I did well, what I did bad. And if you didn't like it, go ahead, dislike the video and tell us that you didn't like it. So stay tuned, subscribe, like, all that good stuff, and we will catch you next time.